thank you for bearing with me. Just waiting for a few people to jump in the chat here, and if you could say something. It normally takes about 15 or 20 seconds before everything goes live at my end. So I'm talking, thinking, am I talking to myself or is it all good? But this week's edition of the live stream, a number of topics. Obviously, we can't ignore some of what's going on with different boxing events around the world cancelled, the pandemic and such. Although the UK not following suit so far. Also, some fights have been made. We'll touch back on last weekend's action as well. Robert Helenius getting a very good win. F.A. Jagber looked better. He's learning. Frank Sanchez, he looked sharp. Dempsey McKean, that was a good fight in Australia with Johnny Rice. This weekend, though, not a lot of action, but we can talk about that too. A couple of other fights announced, rankings updated in the IBF. Otto Wallen wearing a moon boot, Joseph Parker Jr. fast. Some comments that Buddy McGirt made about Deontay Wilder, Hrgovic and Forest official, and Kubrat Pulev hires a new trainer. So, yeah, there's quite a bit going on. It's interesting that March has been, relatively speaking, a quiet month in terms of fights, but overall the news has just been thick and fast. So we've got Jahu in the chat. So he's from Paris. Good morning to you too. So it looks like there's 5 in the building at the moment. So thank you for joining the Boxing Squared live stream. Wherever you are in the world, morning, noon or night, thank you one and all. Unger in the chat here. Hello Unger. As I was saying, yeah, a few technical issues. The internet was out. So I'd done a video, heavyweight news mashup video, which is now up on the channel. So after I was already going to be late, so I thought, well, I'll put that up, loaded it up and did all the back end stuff that you have to do. So apologies, an hour late, but some of it out of my hands. But we are here now, and that's the main thing. So Bronze Doss says, morning at 9:37 London. Piston Jab Liston says, what's your favourite food? That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a favourite food. I have different foods that I like, but I don't necessarily have a go-to dish as such. Levi says, hi from New Zealand. Piston Jab Liston, morning at 9:37 in Sheffield. Did daylight savings happen in the UK? I think we were 12 hours previously ahead of the UK, but perhaps that's happened, and maybe in some parts of the world I'm not late at all. But it is 10:38 here in New Zealand, so an hour later than I would otherwise be from my usual time. But we're here, that's the main thing. So we'll get cracking into a few topics actually. So first, I guess touching on the coronavirus, the pandemic, a few bits and pieces there, and then we'll move on to some other topics that I sort of listed off at the top of the program. But yeah, I'll try to, as people come in for the live stream and the chat starts to get a lot busy, because it picks up and then it picks up really quickly and just goes rapid fire. It's hard to keep up with it. So as we go with the topics, drop your thoughts or anything you'd like to respond to as I'm talking about it, and I'll see if I can try to keep up with the chat as best I can. But if you want to hit me with a question, do so in between topics so I can sort of address stuff there at the sort of as the comment section is flowing. Yeah, but not good. Sort of coronavirus, as it were, is really starting to have a knock-on effect, not just to boxing, but everything. And obviously the sort of panic buying, we've seen a bit of that, and it was one of these things that for me I was sort of looking at a few days ago going, sort of seems to be a little bit over the top, but then it's like day by day things that are ratcheting up. And obviously sports announcements with the NBA cancelling its season, and you had college basketball, you've had other sports sort of putting the kibosh on events that are in the next couple of months, and now sort of in the last 36 hours boxing is really following suit now. So it does make me wonder, how long could this go for? Is this going to be something that is 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? I know that there is optimism that this could clear up sometime soon. Maybe it will be 1 or 2 months, but it's really hard to say, because I've seen other projections around in other bits and pieces that suggest things might only just sort of escalate from here. But obviously a lot of heavyweight fights coming up in the months of sort of April, May and June. Some big cards in the United Kingdom in particular, which is effectively at this point the only holdout, as in terms of countries sort of not really sort of curtailing big events, sporting events like that. Doesn't mean that it won't change, but at this point the UK is sort of holding firm. So Frank Warren putting out a statement saying his card for April the 11th between Joyce and Dubois is going to go ahead at this point. Also, we have other events. Matchroom has sort of said, yep, tickets are still on sale, and if things do change, you can get a refund. I guess they will be concerned about people staying away at this point. They want to try to reassure people that you can buy these tickets with confidence, and you will get your money back if anything changes. I guess as a boxing fan, though, I'm sort of looking at this thinking, what's going to happen here? Because obviously on this channel I cover heavyweight boxing, but as a fan in general, I watch more than the heavyweight division. So with all sorts of stuff being cancelled, it's not good just as a fan, but I understand what's happening and why. And there will be different debates and theories about, is this over the top or whatever, but given what's happening and the sort of severity, and I mean the whole country of Italy is on lockdown at the moment. It's this whole situation, it just seems to be sort of one day to the next, just sort of getting a bit worse and worse. What do you make of this in terms of the boxing calendar? It was looking pretty good in terms of upcoming events, and I'm just a little skeptical that they will go ahead. I mean, if there ends up being a bit of the next couple of weeks things worsen, specifically in the United Kingdom, where we know that there's some cards that are still going ahead, that could really sort of put the kibosh on things. Back to the chat here. So Bronze Dossa says it was nice to see Joe Parker promo videos on Matchroom YouTube. 54 Troll Swan, what's Helenius' best win? Kovnatski, Chisora, Tepper, Peters, Brewster, or Lyakovic? I would say Adam Kovnatski. I think that, the Chisora one was marred in controversy. I think some of the other guys, maybe were they at their primes at that point. I definitely think this was, he's a guy who's had a lot of talent, and it's never quite been realised at the sort of the top level. And a guy like Kovnatski, who was regarded somewhere around, top 10, either inside at 10 or just outside, it's a good win. But we'll come to that a little bit later. So John Otter says, good morning, Boxing Squared, a bit later than usual today. I had some technical issues. The internet wasn't working, so I couldn't really do much of anything. So once it did start working, I uploaded the video that I'd already prepared to go up a couple of hours ago. Jay Scarvey says, good day to you too. Cash Cow says, hey, good to see you live streaming. Every Friday. So that's been happening for about, 4 or 5 months now. Jay Jaho says, sporting events cancelled at least 3 weeks in France and Spain. Cash Cow says, Chisora is going to get schooled by Usyk. I do think Usyk is going to win that one. 54 Troll Swan says, do you think Artur Beterbiev, how he would do at heavyweight? Well, given he's at light heavyweight, that's jumping up 2 divisions. That's a interesting question. Should it be, how would he do it cruiserweight? Because that's probably where he'd go next. Darren's one says the USA's numbers are going to explode in the next week or so. I believe they don't have any testing kits or something at the moment. Jay Scarvey says Denmark is on complete lockdown. A number of countries are really starting to tighten up on all sorts of things, travel restrictions, and Italy is 60 million, the whole population, and obviously Denmark, from what you're telling me, too, complete lockdown as well. Ali says, thoughts on Shakur Stevenson moving up to 130 after this next fight? I would have thought he should have been sort of staying at featherweight for some time. In my sort of view, he really hasn't done much at the weight. He's still a prospect, and even this fight that was cancelled against Mariaja, it was, it wasn't exactly top level opposition. It was a guy who's durable, would give him rounds, but Shakur Stevenson would have picked him apart, probably got a decision there. Eddie Sassa says Brewster was past it when he fought Helenius. That's what I sort of say. Some of the names are good. Samuel Peter from, the mid-2000s, that version of him would have been a great win, but obviously it wasn't that early in Helenius' career. Eddie says, sorry, we just did that. Isabella says, morning, Mr. Squared, all the way from sunny Hull in England. Love Friday's live stream. Is it actually sunny in England? That's a surprise to me. Darren NZ says, or Darren's one, sorry if I'm pronouncing that one wrong. Boxing Squared, what are you doing media-wise these days in New Zealand? How do you mean? You need to be more specific with that. Mr. Tone, so do you believe pay-per-view buys may be more due to the virus? For what, the UK pay-per-views coming up, we've got 4 of them. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it'll still come down to the equation. Are people going to, want to part with, £20 or whatever? I mean, you might find that in certain places that people might have had some impacts themselves in their life through reduced work or something. So maybe you can make a case that the pay-per-views might actually go down. I don't know. Marcus says, good morning from a snowy Norway. What is this? So is it still winter up there? I would have thought it was spring, coming into spring. Taize HD, good morning, Mr. Boxing Squared. Not a boxing question, but what are your thoughts on last week's fight between Adesanya and Romero? It was a painful watch. It really was. 2 counter-punchers squaring off against each other and waiting for the other one to make a move. It wasn't a great sort of exhibition for for UFC, but obviously the co-main event, that was a great fight. But yeah, I guess as Adesanya has sort of said, Romero was the challenger. He needed to go in there and take the belt from Adesanya. Both played it safe, and it ended up being a bit of a dull sort of watch. Cash Cow says, I didn't know you were live streaming. I'm usually out on a Friday night. Yeah, I think this might be about live stream number 20 or something like that. Eddie Sassa says, Sunny Hull. Lol. Jay Scarvey says, all public employees in non-critical positions have been sent home for 2 weeks. All schools, high schools, universities and other public or state institutions are closed for 2 weeks. Yeah, I guess there will be all sorts of, depending on different countries. I mean, at the moment, where I am, New Zealand, not a lot in terms of restrictions, but I think there's only been something like 5 cases here. But I guess, we're sort of far-flung place in the world. It's harder to get here, but a lot of self-isolating that's been going on, something like 9,000 cases. Yeah. So Eddie says, never dull in Hull. 54 Trell Swan, who punches harder, Hellenius or Rivas? It's a good question. I would probably pick Hellenius. He's always been a big puncher. I think Oscar Rivas in the opening rounds of a fight is going to be, explosive, but Hellenius is one of those guys that he does hit hard if he can connect. It's a shame with his career that all the injuries, especially hand injuries, have sort of hampered him, sort of led to that unrealized potential. Question mark says, sunny but cold as hell in London. Ruben Guerrero says, when you're getting banged out by Washington, not a good look, good L for Kovnarski at all. What's that whole sort of situation? You've got all these guys who faced each other and different results being thrown out. Someone sort of said it's the triangle theory in action, and a couple of times in different comment sections they said it's not a triangle theory anymore, it's a triangle with Hellenius, Washington and Kovnarski. Darren's NZ Boxing Square, didn't you used to do radio and print media at one stage? I haven't worked in the media for best part of a decade, so yeah, I've done all sorts of different things since then, but yeah, I was in the media for almost 10 years, but yeah, I've been almost out of it longer than I was in it. Cash Cow says, I know this isn't heavyweight talk, but I thought the Khalid versus Chocolate Tito fight was weird. It was like Khalid wanted to get to take some punishment. Yeah, I was sort of half watching that fight while I was making dinner, so it's, I didn't catch it all, and then, it's one of those things that something big would happen and I'd have to sort of, look back over to the iPad as I was watching it, catch replays in between rounds, so can't comment too much on that. So Metal Box J has got Parker vs Hergovich, Parker vs Gassiev, Parker vs Hunter, probably none of which will get made anytime soon. Simple Boy says UK will be on lockdown very soon and many sporting events have been called off already, and Eddie said no shows will go on without a crowd. We get more sunshine than you think. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do, mate. Cash Cow wanted to take some punishment. Oh, for the Rigondeaux fight. Marcus says, did you watch the amateur tournament in Amman? Jalalov fought Hooney. I was following some of the highlights and results, but I wasn't some of the timing wasn't great for me in terms of that. But yeah, I definitely on social media and as well as results was keeping up with it. But yeah, I mean, Jalalov and Hooney getting to the final, Jalalov getting the gold. He actually liked a tweet that I did because I sort of, had him posting his photo and a couple of thoughts on it. And actually Akhmed Aliyev as well sort of hit a like on that one too. But the comment that I made was, there's not many, 6'7" southpaws that are slick running around in the amateurs. He's a hot favourite, I think, to take the gold and get a medal there. And Justice Hooney is in with a chance of a medal too. Mark Mello says Britain, Thailand, 101 Fahrenheit today. Major boxing fan here. What do you think will be the fight of the year? Are we going to get many of the year? I mean, that's the thing. L-Dog says, I can't believe we're about to see this awesome boxing schedule being cancelled. Yeah, I hope not, because there is some really good fights coming up, especially in the heavyweight division. More broadly, there's also some good fights, but I think a lot of the meat of the heavyweight calendar was going to be happening sort of between April and June. I think, the 4 big fights that I mentioned earlier on that we know about, the 3 matchroom ones and the Warren card with Joyce and Dubois. But there were some other good fights sort of laced in between. As I've sort of been saying, and this is a trend for 2019 too, it sort of seems to be that for heavyweight boxing, especially first couple of months of this year, there's 1 or 2 weeks in a month that have a number of fights. There's a whole bunch that are sort of stacked together, and then it's sort of a feast or a famine type situation. I mean, this weekend being a good example, there's a couple of top ranked prospects that were meant to be on cards, and that was about it, which, with all the heavyweight action going on and all the boxing cards around the world, I don't know why it's like that, where it seems to be, for a couple of weeks at a time there won't be much doing, which is weird to me. L-Dog says, we just did that one. Piston Jab Liston, England has no sun, nowhere near as New Zealand, very dark colour to the skies often. I've never actually been to the UK, so I can't really comment on that. The whole no sun in England thing was just a bit of banter I was throwing out there. It's isn't the old the joke for an English summer that it's raining? Simple Boy says, Parker versus Hunter. Hunter has called him out. Yeah, but it doesn't mean they're going to make that fight. Next, it seems to be that they're really looking at this fight with Junior Farr. David Higgins is still sort of saying public comments, and he's quite positive, so it must really still be an option that they're pursuing. Which, I mean, as I've mentioned, and I think I mentioned it last week as well, so I don't want to get too much into it again. I don't know how well it would actually do in New Zealand, because there's no, casuals aren't aware of Junior Farr. He's got no real notable wins as such. It's going to be a harder sell, especially that Parker is, basically 18 months been MIA with tune-ups and had those couple of losses. I mean, and this is sort of what I think back to, because I grew up watching David Tua. And after his shot with Lennox Lewis for the title, everyone loves a winner on the way up. But after that, it was kind of like, at least in my view, his popularity sort of, came off the highs. And I think that's a similar situation with Parker too, that he's not as popular necessarily with casuals as he once was. I mean, people still know his name and he's a household name, etc. But will they be clamouring for a fight against a somewhat unknown guy, albeit his record, has the O attached to it still? L-Dog says, fingers crossed we at least get Breedis and Dorticos. Well, that's not looking good. In that update I did earlier today, the WBSS organisers are sort of saying that they're on, they're waiting and watching, but Latvia does have a ban on public events with a certain number of people. AA Boxing and Blunt says the UK has already cancelled some sporting events, but will come into effect on Monday. Cheltenham Racing and the Old Firm game will go ahead as planned. How would Dorticos do at heavyweight? Yeah, he'd probably do okay. I mean, I think there's a number of guys at cruiserweight who would have okay careers at heavyweight. I think, as it is, I mean, Breedis knocked out Manuel Char, 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, Char has, still considered top 30-ish, something like that, has the WBA regular title, although in my view he's never really been a major factor in the heavyweight division. But some of these guys can come up and occupy top 20, top 30 spots almost instantly because they're good fighters. And let's face it, there's a number of heavyweights rolling around that hit hard, but they're sort of plotters, come forward, they can be outboxed and outpointed. Force Ghost Fabio says, good morning to you too. Darren's 1, Parker, Joshua, Ruiz, Triangle 2. Yep, that's true. Thoughts on Sonny Edwards at heavyweight, says Piston Jab Liston. Well, you'd have to ask Michael Hunter about that. They've been having some banter about that on social media. So Tyzy HD said, imagine the disappointment if an AJ Fury Undisputed fight would have been made and then cancelled due to coronavirus. I mean, I don't think we can look that far ahead because the fights between, you know, the respective opponents at the moment haven't happened, so it's too hard to look forward to. And I mean, you've got Alexander Usyk, who might be the next guy for Joshua after Pulev anyway, and we'll have to see on all that stuff. So why do you think Usyk beats Chisora? Well, if you watch my video that I did the other day, I laid it out pretty clearly why I think he beats him. Ruben Guerrero says, you catch Spilka cruiserweight debut. No, I missed that one because Lucas Rozansky was off the card through illness or whatever it was. So given I'd been up till, I think it was 4 a.m. in the morning with the whole Dempsey McKean card in Australia, I opted to take a couple of hours of sleep. I'd just watched the Huey Fury fight and I was like, no, I'm going to have a couple of hours of sleep and that sort of thing. But I heard that it was effectively, or this is what, you know, even the reports were saying, that it was a gross robbery with him being dropped a couple of times. I mean, Spilka's been washed for a while. I mean, the whole, that Chisora fight proved it too. But even before that, he'd been in some fights where he didn't look that good. UK Ghost says, a lot of football games are off already in the UK, just hope it don't last long, but not holding my breath. AA Boxing and Blunt says, yes, all sporting events cancelled in Latvia. 54 Trell Swan says, who do you want to see Helenius fight next? Well, it's hard to say because he's going to get some approaches now with having won that WBA Eliminator. He's, you know, already shot up into the IBF rankings in that rankings video I did the other day. I think, what was he, number 6 or something like that? Yeah, he's got options and he's going to get a payday. I don't know if he's got another one of these wins in him. I mean, Kovnatsky was a guy that, I think, you know, it's been obvious that someone eventually was going to chin him. I just didn't think it was going to be Rob Helenius necessarily. Even though I said in my preview coverage, don't be surprised, because he's a big puncher. He can hurt him. He could maybe get him out of there. But, you know, I was still picking Kovnatsky to win. I sort of said it was a 70-30 fight. Ruben says, if Parker fights Junior Fark, got to be hard to stay a fan. Done nothing since the White loss. Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. And say if he fights the middle of the year and it is a fight that fans don't necessarily want to see, but I guess, you know, who can he fight next that's available? I know Michael Hunter is calling him out, but I haven't heard Joseph Parker's response to that. I mean, they say that, you know, Higgins, you know, Joseph Parker will fight anyone, but he hasn't exactly sort of said anything about Hunter either. So Manuman666 says, thought I wasn't going to get my BS live stream fixed today. Salute. Yeah, I was saying at the top of the stream I had some issues with internet. So, yeah, that's sort of, a couple of hours. And once it did come back online, I uploaded a video which I've just put up, which you can go to and see if at your leisure. Heavyweight news mashup video, a new one. Can I do a top 20 heavyweight of all time? Possibly, but you know, that's going to take quite a bit of time, research and effort. Most of the sort of stuff that I do, you know, obviously sometimes, you know, some videos might take up to a day, maybe a bit longer, but generally it's 2 to 3 hours max for a more complicated video. Yeah, so I'm not going to say yes, I will do that. I mean, it's probably better to ask the boxing librarian his take on that, because that's his wheelhouse and that's what he would do. I mean, I know a lot about heavyweights from, you know, the 90s onwards, because that's since I've been following boxing, but I can't say I've done any historical research to any real extent on guys from, you know, the 1900s upwards to about 1940. I mean, a lot of those guys, I know the names, but I haven't really seen any footage or, you know, done too much research. Who wins, Horn versus Tszyu? Good question. I'm not sure. I know Tim Tszyu's got a lot of sort of hype now behind him, and obviously been the son of a legend. It helps, and he's had some good performances. But Jeff Horn, I mean, is he going to be too much for Tszyu? Is he got enough experience to beat a experienced campaigner like Horn, who's now been there, done that, and got the postcard? Yeah, I mean, it might be a step too far, but, you know, I'm interested to see the fight. And L-Dog thinks that Jeff Horn will batter Tszyu. So I'll try to get to my list of topics soon, because the chat's starting to catch. I'm starting to fall behind in the chat, and once that happens, it's all over. So 50 in the building. So thank you for joining the Boxing Squared live stream. Wherever you are, morning, noon or night, thank you for being here. Smash that like button if you can, that does help. So I'll just get to a couple more things and we'll get to my list. So let me suck your toes, girls says. That's quite the name. Hunter should fight Jennings next if the Parker fight don't happen. Jennings always gives it a go, and stylistically a competitive fight. I see what you mean, but I think people don't realize the restriction, because there's now these silos that are formed, PBC, Top Rank, and Matchroom with its US and UK stable. How hard movement can be between the two. I mean, unless you're basically being fed to the wolves type thing, you're not going to see too many cross promotional fights. That's just a reality. I mean, apart from the odd one, the odd exception too, we're just not really seeing them at the moment. So you've got to look more in within the Matchroom stable, and they should be making a lot more in-house fights, because they've got all these fighters. They're just not matching them together. Michael Hunter can't get a fight, and they've got about 15 heavyweights within the Matchroom stable right now. To me, I'm just like, how does that happen? So Darren's one says McKean should fight Farr. Good Anzac fight. It's probably a bit late for Anzac. That's April 25th. It's March now. It's probably more mid-year if they were to make that. But those two guys, relatively similar records. I think McKean is 18-0, Farr's like 19-0. That is about the level. I think they're on about the same level at this point. I would like to see that fight. I think that would be very competitive. Glenn Richards says, I think Horn mauls him. 54 Trell, who would win Spilka versus Char? Well, it's hard to pick Spilka these days because his chin is just made of origami paper. He just seems to have zero punch resistance. Dean Paskalev, Boxing Squared, what do you think is the chance percentages for Pulev to upset Joshua? Maybe 25%, something like that. I mean, I think Joshua's a firm favourite for a reason, but yeah, I've said, I think it might have been a week or two in one of the live streams back, that I was going to be doing a video on sort of a few things that I've been thinking about Pulev and his chances, and obviously these 3 years that he's had to effectively plan for Anthony Joshua. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be some sort of walkover as some suggest. He's coming to win. He is older, but yeah, 75-25. I mean, some might say it's more like 90-10, but I think 75-25 is probably fair. L-Dog says, I'll be rooting for Zoo. Force Ghost Fabio, everyone ducking Tom Schwartz. Radio, I'll leave that one. Mr. Tone says, sorry, I've been so mad here, I missed a few of your vids. Point me to the one that you did with Usyk and Chisora. I've been listening to others, but as I said, missed yours. I believe Chisora has a chance though. Well, if you go to my to the video section on my channel, you'll be able to see just from a day ago there was a video that's, I think it's got about 5,000 or 6,000 views so far. Yeah, but that details my thoughts on that Chisora and Usyk fight, that there's questions to be answered, and for both. But also I'm covering off in there, and I know this won't sort of please a lot of Chisora fans, that there is quite a bit of hype that he's got behind his career from beating rinsed fighters like Spilka and Price. So yeah, I do touch on some of that, but I think Alexander Usyk, this is a really good test for him, and if he can get past Chisora and look good, it builds towards a fight with Anthony Joshua. I mean, part of the reason that they are probably also from Usyk's team as well, that they would want to take an interim fight like this in the UK, is they need to build his profile more, and they need to build the narrative that he is a guy that could potentially beat Joshua, because if people don't see it as a competitive fight, they're not going to buy the pay-per-view. And that, after all, at the end of the day, boxing is a business, and they want you to buy the pay-per-view when the fight happens. X-Ace99 says Usyk would beat Chisora. That's how I see it. Glenn says you haven't watched Joe Lewis. I have watched, a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not like I've been doing research for videos and ranking them as, who is the top 1 to 20 heavyweights. L-Dog says people tend to underestimate Horn because he lost to Zarafa, who was a stripper, but Zarafa is actually a good fighter. Yeah, I mean, I guess styles make fights, and remembering he went up, what was it, to middleweight for Zerafa. Horn is, I don't really see him as a middleweight, but yeah, he was a big welterweight, Jeff Horn, but, if you're jumping up 2 divisions, I mean, look how that ended for Kell Brook. Zerafa is a guy who's, for where he fights, he's been consistent and he's got punching power. He caught Horn and got him with some great shots, got him out of there, but obviously we saw what happened in the rematch. Force Ghost Fabio, Luis Ortiz sparred John L. Sullivan. L-Dog says Luis Ortiz coined the term pugilism. Rightio. Okay, just getting down the chat here. Zoe Patterson, do you think Sky will go bust because of DAZN? I feel like Eddie has sold the UK out a bit. Well, he's still contracted to Sky until 2021. See, the thing is, DAZN is its own business. You might end up. See, this is the thing. I mean, if you have it, it's the same here. It's a pay subscription service. Generally, you have to have, if you've got the set-top box, you have to have the general whatever service they provide, and then your sport on top. So you're already paying a decent chunk just to get general sports, which is going to include boxing. And if you're a really big boxing fan, you probably want more boxing rather than just every now and then. And even if you do like some sort of fan pass type thing where it's just for the sports channels via a mobile or something like that, there's a cost to that, and boxing is not specifically Sky's focus. So Matchroom Boxing is a boxing outfit, so arguably their brand lends itself to a service like DAZN at the moment, which is globally focusing on boxing to begin with. They're trying to use that as something to grow their own sort of, become the Netflix of sport. So I don't necessarily see Eddie Hearn having sold out, because at the moment, his deal with Sky is still in place. But obviously, DAZN is going to be showing their content. I mean, you might actually find if for hardcore boxing fans, it might be better if you don't watch anything else on the Sky Sports channels. You can actually just get the boxing, which is what you might only want right now, and it might be at a cheaper cost. So, I mean, there's going to be pros and cons either way about all these sorts of things. Benjo says Rocky couldn't carry Holmes's jock strap. Yeah, that was a great quote. I did watch a piece on Boxing Beats and Rhymes channel the other week where he was going through some of the history of that with Rocky's brother being at a press conference and where that was all said. That was very entertaining. Just having a drink. Apologies for that. So Ped from says morning from the UK. Morning to you too. Morning to Ayup too. Glenn says you need to take a month off and watch Joe Lewis constantly. Well, if I take a month off and not do any videos, I'll probably come back and have no subscribers. LMK2 says, unfortunately, I think all of our conjectures will be altered or postponed due to event cancellations and so forth, due to the virus events evolving worldwide. Grim, to say the least. Yeah, it's not looking good. Marcus says, who do you think Ruiz is fighting next? Chris Arreola, most likely. Maybe Dominic Brazil as a sort of second option. Sort of Kovnatsky seems to be off the table now. Okay, so lots of people saying that they'll be cheaper than DAZN will be cheaper than Sky. I mean, it depends. If you watch Sky for all sorts of other things as well, cricket, rugby, football, and the boxing is sort of the cherry on top, then you might be a bit annoyed that you have to pay something else. But if you just watch boxing, then DAZN might be a good option. But then again, they're not going to have everything either. The Sky shows, even though the quality has been a little bit lower recently, they will still be on Sky. I did have to laugh when IFL Umar was interviewing Joe Markowski from DAZN, and he asked, would the DAZN fights still be appearing on the Sky YouTube channel after DAZN had launched in the UK? I thought that was the worst question in history. Where are we here? Yeah, so DAZN, so Ace says would be $4.99 in the UK. Yeah, I mean that'll be a starting price, but as soon as they start putting in other content, they'll ramp it up to like $10 or $15 or whatever. It'll go up. It'll stay low for now. But obviously, if they don't have a lot of content, they can't justify it having it over a certain price either. Okay, lots of back and forth here in the chat. So Ayup says Larry Holmes, best heavyweight of all time. I definitely think he was underrated. I don't think he's maybe because the 80s are not generally regarded, sort of sandwiched between the 70s and 90s, which are considered better eras. So I don't think he maybe gets some of the props that he does deserve. Okay, I'll just get to my list here. So we've got 57 in the chat. So I caught up on the chat. That was amazing. That never happens. So Usyk Chisora, we'll start off with that. So official announcement was made this week. Who wins and how? I guess the question is, will it go ahead? But on the basis that it does, we'll just, for now say we're just looking at it that it will. Who do you like in that fight and why? If you've seen my preview video that I did, that there's lots of questions for both to answer. Because I know, some people now consider Chisora this, remade man and that he's now a top 10 heavyweight. I don't see it. I think some of that is careful matchmaking that's paid off well with knockouts, convincing fans that he is this, changed guy. But, at 35, 36 years old, 9 losses, and people forget he got knocked out by Dillian Whyte just over a year ago. Didn't look good in the Senad Gashi fight, but then beats Faded Spilka and Faded Price. So I think the marketing of Spilka as this reinvented man has been one of the best things that has happened in terms of convincing some fans' minds that he's got a lot left. He's always going to be a guy that comes to fight and is going to bring some danger, and he'll give it a go. But styles make fights, and Usyk is just going to be a style that's not good for Chisora. The movement will just give Chisora fits. I mean, he couldn't track down Senad Gashi back in, April 2019. I just can't see it. I mean, I think Usyk is just going to be on the move, picking him off, using angles, and I think he's going to make it tough for Derek Chisora. And if he does look good, gets a good win, as I mentioned earlier, it's a good sort of advert for him. He'll convince some fans, and that builds towards an event with Joshua, because it's kind of like that whole Michael Hunter thing. Some people still consider Alexander Usyk a cruiserweight, and some people don't give him a chance to get against any of the top guys. But he's fought big guys before, as an amateur, and the semi-pro World Series of boxing. So he's going to be in some good fights. He may not necessarily be a guy that is banging people out, but I think in terms of a boxing sense, he's going to outbox some guys. But questions as well for him to answer. If he does take some big shots, can he handle them? I think he's already answered that before. Previously, he's faced big punches before, but for a lot of fans, there are still questions to be answered. And Chisora too, can he handle the movement? Is he going to be able to prove that he is this reinvented character? I'm not so sure. So we'll just get back to the chat here. So Ayup says Chisora for him. Ruben Guerrero says Senad Gashi fight was revealing. Yeah, I mean, movement is his kryptonite. Against Ajit Kabayel, he just couldn't, sort of get going because Kabayel's movement and boxing was just too slick for him. He was coming forward like he was sort of in treacle. And there have been some that have come to the channel and said, one specific comment was about that Ajit Kabayel has got far more credit for that win that he should have, that Derek Chisora didn't used to train and trained himself and wasn't motivated. And it's, there is a part that I covered in my preview video that I said, look, if other fighters were to basically, and fans on their behalf, to dismiss a whole slew of losses and performances, we'd call them out and say it was excuses. I don't think Chisora is a reinvented man. He's a good fighter, but at this point, he hasn't proven he's anything above, sort of top 15, top 20. Every time he stepped up, he's lost. I mean, if he can get a win against Alexander Usyk, that'll be a massive, massive win for him, and I'll give him full credit, but I can't see it happening. Ped says, okay, that's something else. Unga says, Cash Cow, Holmes' jab was out of this world, but quality of opponents questionable. Never had a clear defining win against a top opponent. And actually, I was listening to, and it was Scott70 who posted a very good interview of Holmes. It was a podcast that Otto Wallin is involved with. And Holmes offered to, get down here, I'll teach you how to jab. But actually, quickly, while I'm on Otto Wallin, you may have seen that clip that I had in a mashup video, as well as I posted it on my Twitter. So he's training in a moon boot, sitting down, working the heavy bag. So he was meant to have a minor injury. I don't know what happened, but didn't seem minor to me when I saw that training clip. I thought they didn't quite get their lines sort of arranged in terms of the severity of the injury, which we don't even know what's wrong with them. It's just sort of a foot injury, but that's not very specific, is it? Ruben Guerrero says Caballero boxed circles around Del Boy. He certainly did. Let me suck your toes, girls. To be fair, Usyk, he's not juiced to the gills. Will says, I didn't get notification for the live. Angry. Have you got the bell icon clicked? I'm not sure what to tell you. Cash Cow says, Chisora ain't that big. He's pretty wide, though. Yeah, I mean, there seems to be this fallacy that Alexander Usyk is, a small heavyweight. But Derek Chisora is like 6'1". He's just extremely bulky. He's a big guy, sort of, broad. Usyk is 6'3", so he's taller and got the reach on him. So part of this as well is that the matchmaking is they would have been trying to, have a guy that, he's got some advantages over, so he can sort of put them into action as well. I would have been more interested, I think, to see him against a Chisora level guy, which is sort of somewhere between top 15 and top 20 in my view. I know some people rate him higher, but if someone was 6'5", 6'6", because that's the guys that Usyk is going to end up facing, would have been better to see. I mean, when you think about some of the opponents he was going to be facing for his first fight at heavyweight, originally it was going to be Carlos Takam, then Tyrone Spong. These guys are all pretty similar in terms of the height and the way that they fight. Takam, Chisora, and Spong. I don't know why they're sort of, it seems to be there's a particular style and size that they want to be Usyk in with. Obviously, it must be, in my view, sort of to help, have him get a good win and sort of build a bit of profile. But fighting guys that are 6'6", the tall timber of the division, that would have been okay. I mean, someone like a Hellenius, actually, would have been maybe a guy that, I mean, obviously now after a win over Kovnatsky, that would make a bit more sense. But his name previously, maybe it wouldn't have. But to get ready for those guys like a Joshua, someone who is about the same height and, does have some punch power like a Hellenius, wouldn't have been a bad idea. But obviously they've gone for, Chisora in this fight, and it's a pay-per-view. They'll make a lot of money, everyone involved, and I'll be watching. I'm sure you will be too. So Jay Scarvey says the Hellenius upset just goes to show that ranked 10 to 40 are closer than we've been lulled into believing. Not necessarily. I mean, Hellenius is a guy that's always had a lot of talent, but it's just unrealized, potential. And the thing is, he has had losses. I mean, he lost to Gerald Washington last year, and Gerald Washington was a top 30 guy. The fact is, some of these guys all can't be in the top 10 or the top 20, and we have to sort of raise them up or down based on performances. And if Hellenius has, not been looking good and had a loss and that sort of stuff, he was going to be falling down boards. But maybe the margins are not as big as some people make out, but I still believe that, Hellenius was somewhere around the top 30 before this fight, top 35, somewhere between top 30 and top 40. But obviously he wins, and he sort of, vaults himself up the rankings a bit. Kiwi says, I feel Chisora might give up on us, still frustrated. Hard to say. I mean, obviously that's happened before in his career. Ace says, Chisora versus Bellew would have told us a lot. Yeah, that would have been interesting, but obviously they're friends though. Ayub says, only Chisora because he's British. Well, if you saw from the IBF rankings, yeah, a few people were a bit surprised that it said Zimbabwe, but he was born in Zimbabwe. Obviously, he's been in the UK for some time now. Kiwi says somewhere in the last 4 rounds. For him to give up on a stool. Okay. How do you think former amateur stars Medvedev Zidov and Nestor will do in the pros. Well, I don't know too much about the first guy, but Nestor, I have followed him somewhat, and I've seen his first couple of pro fights. Yeah, it'll be interesting. He signed with Golden Boy, and actually another guy who signed with Golden Boy this week, which was announced, Arslanbek Makhmedov. I actually quite like that signing. He could kind of be their guy at heavyweight, and he will get some attention on Golden Boy cards being on DAZN 2. Hopefully they can match him a bit tougher than Eye of the Tiger management could, but Nestor and Makhmedov, they could end up fighting at some point. I could see Golden Boy thinking, actually, we could build this into something, because Makhmedov stopped Nestor in the final round. This is about 5 years ago in a World Series of Boxing card. Makhmedov getting schooled, and then actually I showed a brief highlight in a video the other day in that one where Makhmedov signed to Golden Boy. So if you do want to go check that out and see, it was I only showed the second, I think it was the second or third, no, it must have been the second knockdown, where he just floored him with an uppercut. It was and Makhmedov is like right hand uppercut heavy. It's just that's like 80% of his arsenal. But yeah, Nestor in general, smaller heavyweight, 29 years old at the moment. It's hard. Yeah, I've kind of liked what I've seen so far. I think he should maybe be in a little bit better shape. He's looking a little bit fleshy. Hard to say. I mean, for some of these guys, I wonder sometimes, would it have been better for someone like Nestor to just have turned pro with that whole sort of crop that after Rio? Because it kind of feels like now that he's out on his own a little bit, and he hasn't really had much in the way of pro fights so far. He's a little undersized for heavyweight, but yeah, I don't know. He's got good skills, good power. It's sort of a TBA. But the other guy that you mentioned, I haven't seen. I'm not familiar with him really, so I can't really sort of comment on that. Let me suck your toes, girl. I keep laughing at that name. Says Chisora. Cash Cow says Chisora going to fall over for the cash. Chisora is a gatekeeper, but that still takes a level of skill and heart. Yeah, I mean, he is. He obviously has his frailties too, in terms of some of the styles that he faces, and some guys are just too big or too strong, use movement against him. But he is a good heavyweight. But for him to steamroll Alexander Usyk, I don't see it. He needs a guy to be basically standing there right in front of him to really to look fantastic. I'm just not sure we're going to see that in this fight. I think Usyk is going to make it extremely difficult for him. So Dell's best win is Takam, whose best win is Michael Grant. Ayup says, my head says Usyk, but my heart says Chisora. Yeah, I think a lot of people will sort of be feeling that way. So Force goes Fabio, says Wallen in a boot, still training, hits harder than Ruiz. Oh, savage. So Jan Michael Vincent with a hot take saying Chisora isn't even that good. Usyk should carve him up. Ace says Dubois versus Usyk would be better. Can't see that happening anytime soon. Ayup says payday and final for Chisora if and when he loses. Well, it wouldn't be a good one to go out. I mean, I guess that question that I raised about the pay-per-view too, what's it going to do? I have seen a few channels sort of suggest, 500,000, maybe even more. I mean, looking at some of his recent fights, I mean, I think the Dillian White one was 530,000. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking 400, 450, something around there. I don't know. I guess it depends if it goes ahead for one, but two, if it does, if there's impacts on people who've, either been put out of work or whatever because of the situation going on around the world, I don't know. So Cash Cow says Usyk needs a win to put himself in the mix. Well, he's already in the mix, but he just needs the win, a good win like Chisora that's going to create some hype and for him ahead of an Anthony Joshua fight at some point, because that's what they want. They've got to sell the pay-per-view. Ped says Chisora is a unit of a guy. His Spilka KO was amazing. Yeah, that was a good one, and it was almost one of those situations. He caught him with a good shot and sort of backed off. It was almost for about a second and a half, where Spilka was clearly in real trouble. It was almost like it was slow motion for a second. Then he sort of jumped on him and finished him in great fashion. Will says Chisora will be too slow for Usyk. Usyk will struggle against taller fighters if the Joyce fight is anything to go on. Usyk has been the taller fighter his whole career. He will struggle against tall, rangy heavyweights. Well, that's what I want to sort of see him in with, because I don't think we've had those sorts of questions answered. Usyk just needs to stay away from the overhand right if he can. Good night. If he can't, good night, Chisora. Yeah, I think. But what you'll see though, and if he does get caught, it'll be one of those sort of situations where I don't think he'll get caught so flush where he's just, I think we're going to see him riding a lot and rolling with a lot of shots. Everything sort of seems to be up in the air now. See, I think Kabiel will just outbox Marius Wok. Lickety split. There's no trouble there. I have had one person in particular come to the channel saying that because Wok was able to hang with an out-of-shape Dillian Whyte, that he's going to beat Usyk Kabiel, which to me is madness. Kepa says, hey man, greetings from Spain. Love your updates. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Kobe says, who do you think is the most underrated fighter in the division? Most underrated right now? Definitely Martin Bakole. James Burrell says, I don't think Helenius was underrated. I think Kovnatski was overrated. Yeah, it could have been part of that too. But, leading with your face, I think we kind of knew there was going to be a point where it was going to crash and burn for Adam Kovnatski. His style, and it's going to be the same with Jarrell Miller. The style dictates that he comes forward and that through his volume, with his chin hanging out in the air, he's going to get caught. It's just not many people thought it would be Helenius to expose him. Or not expose him, because it's not really... It's been clear to see, to me at least, that it was going to happen at some point. And a lot of fans, we've all commented that at some point it's going to catch up with him. Because if your defense is that porous, it's... sometimes your chin won't hold up under if you get caught flush by some punches. And Helenius was, catching with some good shots. BS, what's your favourite boxing movie and what's your favourite movie in general? Favourite boxing movie? There's a few of them actually. I actually recently got done with a really good one, Bleed for This, about Vinny Paz. That was great. When it came out maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, I really used to like The Cinderella Man. I thought that was a great movie. In terms of favourite movie in general, that's a tough question. I've got probably a few favourite movies. The Power of One, The Matrix, The Usual Suspects. I mean, there's probably too many to say. L-Dog says, after seeing how hard Joyce is training, I think he might pull off the upset against Dubois. And I will be doing some more coverage on that. I mean, we've been told it's going ahead. I mean, we're not... I think some people are just expecting Joyce will be tracking forward, Abel Sanchez style, similar to the way that Dubois will. I don't think we're going to see them just trading off in some sort of barn burner. I think Joyce is going to be a bit more nuanced in what he does in this. Ishmael Salas is going to come up with a game plan, and I think we're going to see some movement. So Hillary is Evil says, hello, all, hit like. Yes, please. If you haven't hit like, please do so. It does help me out. Liberalism as a cult says the same thing. Is that the same account? It's almost it's the same picture, isn't it? Cash Cow says, footwork mate, Usyk can fight and dance. Usyk controls the fight and KOs Chisora in rounds 10 to 12. It's possible, but yeah, I'm sort of thinking it's going to be points, but I'm not discounting a late stoppage either. I mean, we saw in that fight with Dillian Whyte, and remember, that's kind of like Dillian Whyte was kind of trying to do a poor man's Alexander Usyk. He was trying to do a Kabiel. He was boxing and moving, and ultimately it was effective because a tired Chisora took a left hook and he was done, knocked out. And people say that, and this is why it's sort of the whole, he's motivated now, Ward Chisora, he's motivated, he's really up for it now. Well, he was up for that fight and he still got knocked out. I mean, some of these, if it was another fighter and people were trying to say what they're saying about Chisora now and discounting and writing off his previous losses, we'd be calling them and saying it's excuses. Will says, I always believed Kovnatski was overrated. Gareth says, wasn't Usyk a super heavyweight in the amateurs? he was both, heavyweight and super heavyweight. He's competed against a lot of big guys. Got a lot of good wins against really tall guys, big punches too. L-Dog says, so Cash Cow says he's going for Dubois because Joe Joyce's promoter manager is a banana. Unga says Usyk was a super heavyweight in a World Series of Boxing, heavyweight in Olympics. Bedzadov is the Azerbaijani former amateur with a win over Joshua. Yeah, can't say I'm too familiar with him. L-Dog says Sam Jones blocked me on Twitter because I wouldn't stop telling him that Hrgovic deserves a rematch with Joyce. Gareth says Sam Jones makes such a clown of himself. I actually find him quite entertaining myself. James Burrell says I think Joyce beats Dubois, one of them getting KO'd for sure. I could actually see it going to I think for promotional purposes it's always talked up as a we're gonna knock each other out sort of thing, but I think points could be most likely. Sorry, I was just reading someone's comment there. Where are we? Who would win Kuzmin versus Helenius? Sergey Kuzmin's been massively disappointing as a pro. There was some good wins that were starting to come on his career, the good sort of build-up wins, but I don't know. He just hasn't been able to adapt his style, and he just looks so plodding in there. He struggled with Joey DeWeco. I think we just got a good read on from Frank Sanchez the other day, the way that you beat Joey DeWeco, stick and move, and he was very clinical in there. He was good, he looked good there, but kind of ended up looking all the same for about 8 of the 10 rounds against DeWeco. But Kuzmin has looked dreadful, and Michael Hunter did a real number on him. So I think bigger man Helenius probably would get the win. I'm not rating Sergey Kuzmin in my top 30 at the moment. He's just fallen way down on my sort of ranking board. He's somewhere in the top 50, but he's got to show us something. So L-Dog says Joyce is slow, but he's bigger than Dubois, far more experienced than Dubois, and has proven to have a granite chin along with a good engine. This is not a one-sided fight. He's been stopped a few times in the amateurs, probably a few more times than people realise too. There's my prospect series that I started a year ago. Only managed to get through 3 videos because they're very time consuming, those ones, but there's some of his amateur history in that. But Joe Joyce has got such a fascinating backstory, having been in the United States, at college, from the UK, doing athletics, and he was a cheerleader and all sorts, and then because of injury he sort of went back to the UK, took up boxing at 22, I want to say. And I think for a guy that's been boxing for 12 years and what he did in the amateurs and a silver medal, he's done a lot of in a short time, really. Okay, I've just got to catch up on the chat here. Fell way behind. I'll get to my next topic, actually. We'll try to rip through some of these quickly. So we covered Usyk Chisora. We covered at the top of the live, the coronavirus stuff. Helenius getting the win. We've kind of covered that off. That was unexpected to a point. He was always I saw him as a chance, but I still expected Kovnatski to win. But it's we get these wins from time to time in the heavyweight division, and so, as someone noted before, they sort of said, is it this a case it's the top 10 to 40 is closer than we think? It might be a case that Kovnatski was overrated, but it could be just a case that it was Helenius' night against a guy who was meant to beat him. But the weight of those punches, and it was a bit of a cherry pick gone wrong. Remembering, Robert Helenius could have been fighting Joseph Parker back at the end of February. That fight almost got made, but for Helenius' sake, he's probably got more money taking on Kovnatski. But obviously, he's going to get paid after this. But that card overall, because of the upset, that just made it, a little bit. It wasn't exactly the deepest card. When you looked at the matchups, I think it was, generally you sort of thought, okay, this is going to be clear who's going to win. A Jagba was going to win, Frank Sanchez was going to win, and then there was the upset, in the main event. But I thought F.A. Jagba looked good. It was definitely a good learning fight for him. And I know, some people sort of look at the opponent and go, Razvan Kajanu, this guy wasn't going to trouble him. But a Jagba clearly needs some rounds to sort of implement these changes that he needs to make, defensively with head movement. And was stringing together some combinations, and there were some nice things, and sure, there was still some stuff he's got to work on, and he can be better. But at least he's making the changes and willing to do it. It wasn't just the same old sort of stuff. It was a different performance from F.A. Jagba, and he broke down Kajanu to the point Kajanu couldn't continue in the 9th round. So, I thought it was a good performance. Frank Sanchez against Joey DeWeco, he looks sharp. I thought maybe he could have put the foot down, but, sort of nipping in and out, throwing that right hand. I mean, there was a lot of talk about how much punch power he's got. I mean, it's hard to say against a guy like Joey DeWeco who's got a chin and a half. So I thought Frank Sanchez did what he had to do and looked good for the most part, but I guess, there's that sort of question. Some people thought it was a really impressive performance, but I thought maybe he could have done a little bit more to put the foot down. So in that sense, I mean, in a division where if you want to really get headlines and attention, you got to put on dominant performances. I mean, he looked really good, but he kind of buttoned off and did just enough, just what he had to do to win rounds and look good in those rounds, but he didn't necessarily go, okay, I'm going to absolutely blitz this guy, which that probably, if he could have done that, it would have been got some people turning their heads, because after that win, I'm not sure people were, some hardcore boxing fans are going to go, yeah, that was a good performance, but anyone else apart from that, maybe not. There was another undercard fight that wasn't televised, and that was Carlos Negron versus Robert Alfonso. And as I predicted, Robert Alfonso lost that one. He got stopped in the first round, so he was meant to be the guy that was, the house fighter, was going to come in here, and he's had an association with Deontay Wilder, been in all sorts of camps for Wilder and other bits and pieces, but he looked dreadful in his previous fight, or one of his previous fights, against Iago Kaladze, and that was pretty much why I was picking that he was going to lose, because I'd seen Carlos Negron against Dominic Breazeale, a year or so ago, and he looked decent until Breazeale starched him. So yeah, that was a minor upset of sorts, but overall, I mean, the card was okay. There were some good performances by Helenius. Obviously, that was a big upset. A Jagba looked decent. Frank Sanchez looked decent. But what did you make of it? And I'm probably returning to about 50 comments in the chat here. So, okay. So I'll just pick this up here. Ayup says, Helenius always looks like a deer in a car's headlights. Yeah, a little bit. L-Dog says, I was wondering, who can a Jagba step up to fight? I was thinking Gerald Washington or Adam Kovnatsky. I think, this is some of the level of fights that's a level too far at this point. There's got to be more of that at a Jagba level. I mean, you may even see, Kajanu level. I mean, I think someone suggested this the other day, it might have been Unger or someone else, that perhaps someone like a Carlos Negron, maybe that will be a sort of guy in the sort of this year that he could face. But I don't think it's going to be Washington or of Kovnatsky, those types, in the next sort of 6 to 9 months. It's just not. They could be in 2021, but for this year, it's going to be guys more like Razvan Kajanu, somewhere between top 50 and top 100, that can give him rounds and that he can start to build off on the improvements that he's making. So YTBC United says, are you cheating? I don't know what that means. Jay Scarvey says, I expected Daniel Dubois to come in guns blazing and try to make it a short fight. If he's unsuccessful landing meaningful combinations, I expect Joyce to find his rhythm and be hard for Daniel Dubois to deal with. I could see this being a case that Joyce is going to be quite risk averse early on, not wanting to get drawn into some sort of shootout. I could see Daniel Dubois trying to be aggressive and trying to really put it on Joyce early, but if Joyce is moving, he could make it hard to deal with. I mean, have we really seen Daniel Dubois, deal with someone who can move around the ring? And I'm not saying Joyce is, this massive, great outbox or anything like that, but he's shown signs of being able to do it. Helenius has never been the same fighter in shoulder surgery following Chisora fight. Before that, a genuine contender. Even after that win over Kovnatsky, I don't think he's genuinely in the running for a title. He is still very beatable, and different matchups, different styles, he will get beaten. So the odd fella says, greetings from the north side. Greetings to you too. North side of where, I guess, is the question that I'm wondering. Will says, if Helenius had a half decent defense, he'd be the best of the division. I think he's well past his prime. Even if he had defense, I mean, the injuries. He was ravaged by injuries. Reza says, Charles Martin versus Joseph Parker. I like that fight. I mean, that's one that periodically gets mentioned by a lot of fans. I think for some reason that seems to be a fight a lot of fans would be down with. But at the moment, with the different promotional factions, I can't see that being made unless it's ordered. Some of these, between silos at the moment, they're not going to happen unless they're ordered for eliminators or whatever. Ayup says he's enjoying watching the career of Fabio Wardley. Yeah, I've been keeping tabs on him, but yeah, I need to see a bit more from him to really. I mean, I haven't exactly been wowed to the point where I think, yeah, this guy's a top 10 prospect or top 5 or anything like that. L-Dog says, I think after getting past Demiration, he could beat Kovnatsky. Possibly, but I think that pressure from Kovnatsky is a bit different from Demiration. That was basically Demiration standing right in front of Ajagba and trading with him. It wasn't like he was walking him down and bullying him onto the ropes or the corner or anything like that. There was just a lot of trading in the middle for the most part. So the pressure would be a different element. And yeah, I think after that Demiration fight, which was a good test, and I said at the time he needed those rounds, and it was a good indication where he was at. And after the Kaladze fight, where he got dropped when he got careless after dropping Kaladze, I think that there'll be more Kajanu types on the way this year. I just think that's how it's going to be. So Kobe Tong says, which 8 fighters would you want in an ideal heavyweight WBSS? So that's the thing. I mean, it's a good question, but it's a fantasy question as well, because if we were to get the top 8 guys that were available, the best that consensus top guys, it would just never happen. That's the problem. I think the only way a WBSS works in reality is where you have almost guys that either aren't in contention immediately or are up-and-coming emerging prospects looking to break through to that next step. I covered this in a video maybe about 6 months ago, and I did sort of list off a bunch of, might have been like 8 guys and 2 alternates or something like that. You could totally have a heavyweight tournament, but money is also a massive problem to it. So the odd fella says Canadian North Side. Okay, gotcha. Regia says, okay, there's lots of back and forth here. So Let Me Suck Your Toes Girl says he almost got into a fight with Wardley in year 5. True story, nice lad though. Ipswich represent. James Burrell says Joe Joyce has done a lot of sparring with the Gypsy King. He's learned how to... Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of that. So Rezia says, man, what about Andy Ruiz? I feel sorry for his next opponent because he got so much to prove. He can't hit and can hit like a truck. It'll be interesting because I could totally see it being Chris Arreola, and the PBC knows that there's still some interest in having that fight. And if they don't have it this year, with Arreola being, 38, 39 now, it'll just pass them by. And they're all about making money, so if he needs, and he said, a tune-up fight, I could see them making Ruiz versus Arreola. It's a fight that's been talked about for years and years and years. So I could see that being what Andy Ruiz does. But Dominic Brazil, I think Andy Ruiz beats him as well. Dominic Brazil's just taken too much punishment. He's been too many wars. Okay, next topic. So we've covered that card from last week. Dempsey McKean, that was a great last round stoppage against Jonathan Rice. I would note, though, that heading into that final round, I was thinking McKean really needed a massive round, at least a knockdown, and possibly even a stoppage to get the win. But he stops Jonathan Rice in, what was it? It was officially listed as it was stopped with 2 seconds to go. But to me, it looked like there was at least 10 or 15 seconds on the clock. I think on my thing it said 10. I saw it on a replay at 60. It depends when you sort of count it from. But yeah, 2 seconds, I thought, hang on, that doesn't seem right. But anyway, I'm getting bogged down. But yeah, I thought Rice put up a really good fight. And I think after the first 5 rounds, I could have seen it going either way, 3-2. Rice had a really big round 6, took round 7 off, but he, for me, won 8 and 9. And Dempsey McKean, if you caught the clip this week, and I did put it up on my backup channel, 99 Boxing, he thought Rice won 8 and 9 as well as 6. He thought he won the first 5 rounds. I thought there was some rounds that Rice won in the first 5, but heading into that final round, I thought Rice, was, in terms of the way I'd scored it and saw the action, I thought he was up, and that if he had a really strong round and dominated the final round, he might actually take it. But the judges' scorecards, one had McKean up by 5 rounds, the other 2 by 3 rounds. So in reality, what I thought was a close and competitive fight, that heading into the final round, if Rice had a strong round, he might be able to take a decision. It was clearly not. But yeah, I mean, if you saw that fight, how did you actually see that final round? Just got a super chat here from YTBC United, who says, "Can you unblock Durden Boxing? He is good people." I'm not sure who that is, but if he has been, well, it's not even blocked. They call it hide user from channel. He's obviously at some point either been abusing people or abusing me, and I've sort of got a pretty low tolerance for people that are just being outright abusive. But I'll have a look. I mean, I don't know when he was taken off the channel in terms of being able to comment, but yeah, if people want to get all ham and abuse people and saying some really nasty stuff, they're not going to stick on the channel, and that includes directing it at me too. Where are we? Just getting back to the chat here. So 50 in the building. Thank you very much for joining the live stream. Did you catch that Dempsey McKean fight last weekend, or highlights of it? Yeah, it was a very fun fight. I really enjoyed that one, and as a result, McKean is into the IBF rankings that came out midweek, so he is now at number 14. Jonathan Rice, and if you caught, I did have a clip from him after the fight. He was just, you could tell, gutted. So God of War says, "What's up, BS?" and chat. YTBC United says, "Ask L-Dog, he is a good dude." Okay, well, I'm not sure. I can have a chat to L-Dog on Twitter or something. Okay, next topic. Not a lot of thought on that. It was a pay-per-view on Epic Center TV, so I'm not sure how many people caught the McKean fight, but yeah, really good fight. In terms of the action this weekend, there's bugger all on. You've got Sonny Conto and Jared Anderson were scheduled to be in different fights on different cards. They're 2 top-ranked prospects, but given the state of all the events being cancelled all over the show in America, I'm not sure if those cards are going ahead. But apart from then, it was not a lot of action worldwide for heavyweights. There was a few journeymen sort of running around in different fights around the world, but not much. But a fight that was announced that you may have caught in the heavyweight news mashup video, one of them this week. I've done a few mashup videos this week. Christopher Lovejoy, the enigma that is Christopher Lovejoy, he will be fighting in the United States, looking for his 20th win on May 30th versus Chauncey Welliver, and there's going to be a WBA regional strap, the only Oceania Pacific title, on the line there. So Lovejoy, that'll be his first fight, because he's American and he's fought exclusively down in Tijuana. But he's built this profile on social media, over 30,000 Instagram followers, and talks all sorts of smack and called every heavyweight boxer under the sun out. Yeah, so Chauncey Welliver will be his opponent. So hopefully there's some footage of that, because it's one of these things people just haven't seen him fight. And the amount of headlines he gets based off, things like the WBA's ranked him twice. And now that there's a WBA regional title on the line for this, if he wins, he probably gets ranked again, which, yeah, Welliver at this point, I don't want to. He used to be okay, a decent heavyweight. I think he's got a record of something like 57-12. He's an American, but he lives in New Zealand, resident in New Zealand. So I guess that might explain why the Oceania Pacific title, or whatever it's called, is on the line. Yeah, I was a little surprised. There was a strat of that significance on for that fight, but yeah, that could see him ranked again. Okay, let's get back to the chat here. Whatever happened to Izu Agono? He retired mid last year. He fought Lukas Rozansky, a Polish fighter that was, or a fellow Pole. That was a fight where Izu Agono just got dominated. Lukas Rozansky stopped him, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, something like that. 3 rounds it might have even been. Yeah, but after that he just basically said that he didn't have the passion anymore, but he wanted to go in there and try and sort of see. He'd had some injuries and motivation issues, that sort of stuff, and Rozansky, yeah, stopped him. So Will says, Aussie. Let me suck your toes, girl. Yeah, so retired. He's responding to Glenn's question there. Unga says, McKean from nowhere in the final 15 seconds. Yeah, it was Rice really had a good last round, and then in the last sort of 30 seconds or so, McKean just poured it on and landed some big shots, and it was one of his left hands that really did the business and put Rice in a heap of trouble, and he was down not long after and just beat the count. But yeah, he didn't look good. I'm surprised the referee didn't call it off then, but yeah, it didn't last for long after that. So liberalism is a cult says only 30 likes and 3 of them are from me. So if you can smash that like button, it would be much appreciated. Ace says Jeff Fennick was a good Aussie fighter. Unga says top rank cards cancelled, showbox cards going ahead, but behind closed doors no crowd. Is there much of a crowd for those showbox cards normally? Australian PM possibly could have contracted the virus. Lovejoy is intriguing. He's got good size, decent hand speed and punching power. The American mainstream seem to be freezing him out. Well, I guess part of that is because he hasn't done anything. It's all been club fights down in Tijuana, and he's grown his profile and name off the back of social media and calling other people out. But yeah, I'm intrigued by him just because, he's been in the WBA rankings a couple of times, and there's almost zero footage of the guy fighting. And that's a problem. But yeah, I'm looking forward to, if it is streamed or something, I'll be watching. I'd quite like to see what he's got. So Regia says Chauncey Welliver, lol. Yeah, he's actually he's the same age as Lovejoy. They're both 36, but Welliver has been a pro, I think it said, since like 2001, so he must have turned pro pretty early. So the Canadian Prime Minister might also have a coronavirus as well. Says Ace 99. Yeah, I just saw earlier there was a story that one of the Australian ministers, Peter Dutton, that he's got it as well. Cash Cow says Joshua versus Pulev. Kubrat is paying $380 to go the distance. Good bet, I reckon. Maybe? Question mark. You seemed less confident as the statement went on. Yeah, I guess in terms of that fight, I still think Anthony Joshua wins that one. Yeah, he's the favourite for a reason. But it could be a more trickier. When the fight was sort of, they haven't done a press release, they haven't done a press conference yet, but there was the whole Joshua and Pulev statements on social media, so it is official to a point. But yeah, there's a lot of comments about Kubrat Pulev being too old and he's going to get battered in a few rounds. I think it's going to be a bit more tricky. I think Joshua's not going to come out aggressive. I think he's going to just sort of see the lay of the land for a few rounds and then try to systematically break him down. But one thing that, if you caught that video that I did, will he play it safe or is he going to take some risks? He needs a good finish. A good knockout, good stoppage. That is massive for the Anthony Joshua machine, because if he fails to get a good performance, or what's seen as a good performance, because the popularity levels have got to be maintained at a certain level, because it's a business after all. So Rezia says, bro, you sound like a Kiwi. Well, that's because I'm from New Zealand. Timothy says, Boxing Squared, good morning from the UK. Where have you been? How do you mean? I've been doing like heaps of videos all week, 3 or 4 of them a day. Not today though, I only did 2 videos today plus the live stream. Glenn says, pity about Izu, I rated him. Yeah, it sort of seemed to be that Dominic Brazil loss that really, and that was a fight, that was back in 2017, I think it was February 2017. That was one of the funnest fights of that year. That was a great fight to watch. That edge of the chair stuff, just an all-out war. But that seemed to take something from him, and he didn't really seem the same after that. And he had that one, I think it was it Fred Cassie? It was, and Cassie retired after 3 rounds and complained of headaches or something like that. He just had this big inactive period, and I don't know what was happening at that point, but obviously mentally he wasn't sort of feeling it anymore and couldn't get motivated. Do you think Lucas Brown could beat Chan, become 2-time WBA regular champion? No. Ayup says, has Eddie Hearn rented a space in Warren's head? I think they have space in each other's head. Cash Cow says, AJ gonna dance his way to victory. It might be a mix of he's gonna be careful and use movement, but I still think at some point he's going to want to to really put it on Kubrat Pulev, but with that comes risk as well. Shaz Iqbal says, can the WBC or VADA sue those LDBC channels for slander and lies or spreading fake news? I'm not sure that they would, but Tyson Fury probably could. The Odd Fella says, I'm judging off the limited footage he has on Instagram. It ain't much, but I'm still intrigued. And that was the other thing I was going to mention. I did mention this last week in the stream too, because I had been in contact with Johnny Rice to get some pre-fight and then obviously post-fight comments. But I asked him, because I saw he'd been training with Lovejoy, sparring with him. I had to ask him. I said, you know Christopher Lovejoy, don't you? How good is he? I said, he's been fighting, off TV in obscurity. I just don't know how good he is. And he actually came back and said that Lovejoy's pretty decent and that he's really dedicated himself and that he could be in some good fights. So, I mean, Johnny Rice is, a decent judge. He's a decent heavyweight himself. So, yeah, I guess Lovejoy's got something. And he's certainly got a string of KOs. But, that's been against Neville nobodies, really. So Benjo says, if AJ Pulev goes to the cards, Joshua will get the Canelo on the cards victory for real. Needs a KO. Might need to get Adelaide Bird on the board then. Rezia says, cheer brother, thought so. Rude One Was Up says, hello from Sweden. Question, why haven't you done a video on Tyson Fury's controversy? I did talk about this last week because there's all sorts of videos and positions on either side of that. As I noted in last week's stream, he was wrapped, was inspected, the gloves were put on, the commission, Wilder's team were in there. To me, this is a non-issue. I don't think that, to me it seems like there's a lot of searching around for answers about why Deontay Wilder lost. And I'm not going to be making videos either way and doing debunking videos. I've moved on. I did about 10 days worth of post-fight coverage. Yeah, I'm not interested in getting into that stuff and continuing it. I mean, what's happening now just seems to be a complete money grab by certain YouTube channels. I mean, that's the way I see it. Will says, let's be real, there's a 5% chance of Pulev beating AJ. I think it's probably a little bit more than that. Marcus says, any news from Romanov? Not really. I mean, there's been a few rumours that he might, there could be some fights that he was in. I did hear someone say that maybe Martin Bakole could face Romanov, but I don't know. It's been a bit quiet. There's a number of these guys who have sort of been rising up the ranks that, sort of, top 20 to top 40, 15 and 0 around then, and they just got quiet for long periods. I don't know. So Adrian says the rice just wasn't right. Okay. Regis says Pulev is slow, easy to hit, heavy-footed boxer, age 8 by KO. Pulev getting knocked into retirement more than likely after the check goes through, says let me suck your toes, girl. Unga says Romanov last fight was on Yards Kovalev undercard. He needs to break away from German Titov to get decent fights. It's getting to a point, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of heavyweights as well that have been, I don't want to say stuck, but guys that are coming up, and as I sort of just mentioned, they get to a certain point, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 0. I mean, guys like Peter Milas, Vlad Sorenko, where you're just kind of like, what are they doing? You know, they need to be having those next level of fights, and it just seems to be harder to get them. And I was talking about Arslanbek Makhmedov earlier this week, and that was something I'd been saying for a while, that he needed to sign a co-promotional deal, go to America, and that's what he's done now. He's gone to Golden Boy. I think he can get bigger fights, more exposure, because there's some really good heavyweights running around that are flying way under the radar, but there are also some of them a bit untested. Timothy says David Hay quoted as saying on Counterpunch Boxing, Usyk will dominate AJ. What you say? Well, I think we need to wait and see what happens if Usyk gets past Chisora, and if Joshua gets past Pulev, and when that fight gets made. But dominate AJ? I don't know. I mean, Derek Chisora is, relatively speaking, and height-wise, you know, a small heavyweight. I mean, they've matched, you know, Usyk, or looked to match him, as I was mentioning earlier in the stream, against guys like Takam and Spong. They were looking at those fights for his first at heavyweight, and then they've obviously gone with Chisora here. I think Joshua is a different kettle of fish to Derek Chisora. I mean, Joshua's got a good chance in that fight. He's 6'6". He'll have the reach advantage, the height advantage. He can move. He's proven that. I mean, Usyk is going to be slick and hard to hit and hit clean, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. It doesn't mean that if Joshua uses his natural advantages that he can't make it difficult for Usyk. So, I mean, that he'll dominate AJ, I mean, that's, at this point, probably David Hay just hyping things up. But, you know, I want to see that fight. I mean, if we're going to see some of these big fights happen, let's hope that they do happen. And I do consider Usyk, even at this point before he's faced Chisora, one of the better heavyweights in the division. And I want to see him in with all of these top guys. Ace says Joyce vs Pulev for the snail belt. Ayup says Oteri O'Connor. Shaz Iqbal says exactly, these certain channels will spread any fake news for views and super chats. That's the harsh reality. Timothy Thomas says, Regia, I'm hoping AJ shows added skills for 4 rounds and then stops Pulev by 6 or 7. I think it sort of seems to be from what I've seen in the predictions of fans, it sort of seems to be somewhere between rounds 5 and 8 that people are expecting Joshua to stop Pulev. And I guess that lines up with what he did against Alexander Povetkin. He went through a couple of tough early rounds against Povetkin, and I think people are discounting Pulev, remembering he's 6'5", got a good jab, he can hit with the right hand too. So I mean, it could be a bit more close and competitive earlier on than people think, but maybe Joshua starts to break Pulev down and stop him later on. So Philly Mole has got the peace sign back to you, if I could. Yeah, some reason I can't do emojis, or I don't know. So UK Rob says Corona messed with his notifications. So if you don't know UK Rob, so that is Rob from Mixed Combat Radio. They do great streams, him, Matt and Gary. So yeah, if you haven't subbed to that channel, it's a very good channel for live streams. Yeah, good content. And I did catch your stream today, and I did quite like your joke that with all this coronavirus, instead of being Mixed Combat Radio, you might be No Combat Radio. Fraser says, really appreciate your lack of coverage on controversies like the gloves. It really gives me a good steer amongst all the shit talking. Okay. Liberalism is a cult, says Timothy Thomas. I agree with Hay. Usyk is all wrong for AJ. AJ will look bad. Many disagree with me, but who cares? Who's right? Let's get that fight on. Ace says boxing needs a special pharmacy belt for ped fighters. Regia says, Agent Romanov last seen in the Endgame Avengers. Alan says, got my tickets to the O2 Arena for May 23rd, hoping this virus clears up. What do you think of pretty boy Josh Kelly? Yeah, isn't Kelly, that's not his date, is it? Is it May 23rd? Isn't he on a different date? But Josh Kelly, that'll be an interesting fight against David Avanesian. I quite like that one. I'm not quite sold on Josh Kelly yet. I mean, some of the fights he's looked slick and looked good, but is he against opposition where he's made to look good, but at the next level he's going to be sort of found out a little bit, and some of the slick tricks and what he looks to do is just going to maybe backfire on him. I don't know. I mean, it's some of these guys that you just, it's hard to get a complete read on them to have a proper test that you go, okay, that's what they're really all about. Will says, hey Boxing Square, do you think Wilder's resume has been exposed? No, I mean, I think we've always known what it was. He had a pretty slow burn of a career. They had to build him up over a long time because he needed to develop. The opposition at championship level, I mean, that was a good win over Berman Stavern to take the title. Stavern rated as, a decent heavyweight at the time in 2015. 2015 to 2017, I've always described it as middling meat opposition. It wasn't really the best opposition, but it wasn't terrible, but, it wasn't going to go down on anyone's Hall of Fame list or anything like that. 2018, he's taken risks since then, and Tyson Fury's just proven, he's at a really great level, and that, he's going to be massively hard to beat. So, I mean, Fury has said that he's only sticking around for a few more fights, so I think the heavyweight division will be poorer for it if he pulls the pin. God of War says, I'd be highly surprised if the Chisora Usyk fight will have audience in the arena. I think, didn't Eddie Hearn or Matchroom at least say that they won't be going ahead with cards that have no crowd in the no audience? Ed Too Tall says Lovejoy versus Spong for the WBA mystery heavyweight title. Actually, yeah, there was some Spong news this week that I did report at the back end of one of my heavyweight news mashup videos. So he trains down in Miami alongside Filip Hrgovic, and Mundo Boxing had put up a whole bunch of posts, but they had a series of photos on Tyrone Spong with a caption talking about he was going to be fighting in Paris, that he's got a fight coming up, which was news to me. And yeah, I'm not sure, there's no listing on BoxRec, or I haven't really heard any buzz about that, so interested to see what's going to happen. So Will says Cash Cow is asking why he was timed out. Okay, I'm not sure which mod timed anyone out. Timothy says Wilder's resume has been fragile for years, nothing new, dude. Philly says, I think anyone in the top 5 could beat each other. The top 5 for me is Fury, White, AJ, Wilder, Usyk. I don't rate Luis Ortiz. Ayup says Josh Kelly could be in for a surprise if his mind wanders for a moment. I'll get to my next topic, actually. Whipping through these. Charles Martin, he walks the IBF rankings like a god. Number 2 now. So he had been number 11, beats Gerald Washington, who had been number 9. And now he's at number 2. So he said publicly in an interview with IFL TV or Boxing Social, can't remember which one, that he believes he'll be in a final eliminator in July. So it'll be interesting to see who they order that against. I mean, the next guy after him in the rankings is Ajit Kabiyal. And if Kabiyal beats Wok, or when he beats Wok at the end of this month, will probably just maintain his position in the rankings. But you also have some other guys that are a little further down in the IBF. But I wonder, because I think I'll just bring it up, because they had is it number 6, I think, was Robert Helenius. I wonder if PBC would throw any money at Helenius to try get him in there with Charles Martin, because I would pick Martin to beat Robert Helenius. I think what happened in the Washington fight against Robert Helenius, there'd be something similar, that Martin would land that straight left and take him out. Just bear with me for a second. Just got to go through. I must have about 200 different folders with stuff in it. I don't think people realise the amount of admin just to keep the boxes all heavyweight boxers at all sorts of levels, and then you've got rankings, you've got promoters, you've got all sorts, all the amount of times that I have to use paint to crop and save, and I would have several thousand photographs spread across hundreds of folders. Where are we? IBF 2020. Okay, I'll just bring it up. And it's frozen, of course. Okay, here we go. So Hellenius is at number 6, but number 5 is Andy Ruiz Jr. So I could totally see PBC trying to pull some strings behind the scenes and trying to get a Martin versus Andy Ruiz Jr. fight ordered for a final eliminator. And imagine that. So then Martin and Ruiz Jr., the winner guaranteed a shot at potentially Anthony Joshua, but at least at the IBF holder, whoever it would be at the time. So I could see them throwing money at Hellenius if that's an option, and I could see them trying to lobby for Andy Ruiz and Martin eliminator. I don't think we're going to end up seeing some sort of eliminator with Ajit Kabial. I just can't see it happening. Okay, I'll just get back to the chat here. So Timothy says, BS, should there be a belt for gatekeepers? Example, Chisora, a real challenge as a fighter. But it's all subjective, isn't it? Because I still consider Chisora at that level where he's somewhere between top 15 and top 20, and if you get past him, you're effectively at world level, whereas Chisora's fallen short at world level, repeatedly, but he has a level within the heavyweight division. But then other people, I had a comment, someone left today that someone, because I said that in my preview video for Usyk and Chisora, that Chisora, in my view, is not a top 10 fighter. But I had some comments from people saying, well, the fact that he fought well against Dillian White makes him top 10. But, knockout losses to good fighters doesn't mean that it's not automatic guarantee entry into the top 10. And I had a comment today, someone said he's top 7, which, I'd be interested to know what their top 7 looked like. So Rezia says, this chat just about the heavies, bro. Just wanting to get your thoughts on Floyd saying Terence Crawford is the pound for pound best today. I'd have to disagree and say Canelo. His record speaks for itself. This is a heavyweight channel, but I do cover other questions as they pop up in the chat. I'm a boxing fan myself, so this is Terence Crawford. Maybe a year or so ago, I had him as my pound for pound number 1 or number 2. I think Canelo, there's an argument to say there's about 3 or 4 guys that, could be number 1. Pound for pound lists, just like top 10 lists. As I was just sort of saying with Chisora, I have him somewhere between top 15 and top 20, but some people have him ranked inside the top 10. It's very subjective. But someone's just said Crawford versus Spence. I think if Crawford and Spence, that fight happens and Crawford wins, definitely, I think he probably vaults back to the top of the list if he's not there already. People have all sorts of bun fights about it. Force Ghost Fabio says coronavirus will cancel the long-awaited WBA title fight between Manuel Charr and Trevor Bryan. I'd only just thought of that. And this could be the thing. We've been talking about Charr, and Bryan being so inactive, and obviously Don King's epic quest for peace, as the posters say. I'm sure there'll be so many people who'll be gutted. I don't even think there was going to be TV for that. I think because the purse bid said that they had to have it all sorted by the 22nd of the 20th or the 22nd of March. Yeah, so you could be right on that. That's probably going to be a loophole that they'll just be able to exploit. Some of these fights, are they ever going to happen? Charr was going to be getting $1.5 million, if you can believe it. Liberalism as a cult says, any chance anyone know where I can watch the Fury Wilder 2 fight with BT commentary? I can't help you there. Let me suck your toe, skills. That handle gets me every time. They have a title for a level below the gatekeepers. They call it regular world title, so why not? Chisora would beat Charr. Bryan, I don't think we've seen enough of. He's a big lump, punches hard, but his resume is super thin. But he absolutely destroyed BJ Flores. So Timothy says, BS Martin said on Boxing Social Wilder's gloves were suspect. Also appears to suggest that AJ was on something when they met. Might be able to suggest maybe Martin was on something. He went on a bit of a tear after that. So Cash for Cat says, hi Boxing Squared, hello to you too. Rezja says Ruiz would KO that full Martin. Be an interesting fight. I would really like to see that. God of War says, why do you delete Cash Cow? Don't abuse mod power, guys. Okay, I'm not sure who's been saying what or who's been deleting what, so I cannot shed any light on that. So Benjo says, Premier League now cancelled due to COVID-19. I haven't seen that, but if it has been, I mean, it sort of follows this sort of pattern that's happening around the world now. Didn't Tyrone Spunk fail a test, or did he get cleared afterwards? See, that's the thing. He put up a post after that whole thing came out, but it was just a test during. It wasn't the one that they were talking about that he allegedly failed. So I don't know where all that got to. I mean, some people were trying to come out and say he was cleared, but no, this was just some testing during the training camp that he had passed, not the failed test. So I don't know. I'm not sure what happened, but maybe that's why he's going to be fighting in Paris, because perhaps he can't fight in the United States at the moment. Jim Blankfist, where would you put Tyson Fury on your pound for pound list? I don't do pound for pound lists, but I guess he would be on there. I think he would, if I did a top 10, he'd be there. Timothy Thomas says, BS Chisora top 10, top 20. You joking? Del Boy is top 8. Oh, behave. Top 8. Based on what? See, this is the issue that I take when people sort of say Chisora's top 10. Based on what? So he got knocked out by Dillian White at the end of 2018, struggled with the Senate Gashi, and beat a faded Spilker in Price. As I guess Hatman would say, what brand of crack are you smoking? Top 8. Come on, be realistic. So Fraser says he does walk this earth like a god, so he would know. Ayup says Corona also killed off MotoGP. Yeah, everything's going thick and fast here. UK Rob Boxing says Don King was talking to Impact TV network in the US. That would be great if they could actually get that fight on the air, because Trevor Bryan, no TV for his title fight against BJ Flores, which in this day and age, that was weird. Philly says, I always thought Charles Martin was a bit of a tit, but seeing his views on the Fury Glovegate, I just realised how these tools are willing to embarrass themselves to keep up PBC boat floating. Prophet says, what's up? Timothy says, Timothy Thomas, none of you guys have mentioned are in the top 10. I don't know anyone claiming they are. Timothy says, UK Rob Boxing, what did Don King say? Fraser says, it does appear that coronavirus will at least heavily impact boxing in 2020. If 2020 becomes a lost year, which heavyweights would stand the most to lose from that situation? I think the guys that are nearing retirement, Alexander Povetkin, Luis Ortiz, it could rob them of their last, paydays. I think the guys that are at the sort of, below the sort of top 10 or 20% terms of earning power, you got to feel for the guys that fight 5-10 times a year and they do it for a living. They're career journeymen. It is their livelihood. I mean, they will have to try to do other things. But yeah, some of the older guys, I mean, imagine if this puts off Anthony Joshua and Kubrat Pulev for 6 months or a year. I mean, another year does nothing for Kubrat Pulev. I think the older guys in the sport will, get robbed of paydays. Yeah, so it'll be nothing good. And the inactivity as well, and then no doubt there'll be some shockers where there'll be some guys that'll put on a whole stack of weight and then look average in comeback fights. So Will says coronavirus will be over in a few months, fingers crossed. Rezia says, if it wasn't for Parker getting that spider bite, I have no doubt he would have beaten Chisora. Your thoughts? Yeah, I was picking Parker to beat Chisora using his movement. I think he would have got a decision in that one. Okay, I'll get to my list and see what we've got left, because we've been cracking through it. So I've already covered the Ottawa and moon boot stuff. Filip Hrgović and Jerry Forrest, official. Not exactly a fight that I think a lot of us were looking for, but Forrest had been due to fight Murat Gassiev. That fell over. Must have been promised another fight. Hrgović wants some action. He's been struggling to get some of the fights that he's been calling for. I mean, in the context of a normal career, Filip Hrgović is doing just fine, but he wants to be a bit more accelerated. But seems to be that the gas pedal's not quite, down from Eddie Hearn at Matchroom at the moment on that he's just sort of bringing Hrgović on at a certain level. Forrest, yeah, he's going to get knocked out. Kubrat Pulev hires a new trainer. I did cover that off in a video a week or so ago, just after that was announced on the Kovnatsky card, actually. So Joe Goosen training Kubrat Pulev. What do you make of that? Buddy McGirt saying that Deontay Wilder only needs to make minor changes. What are your thoughts on that? Some of his comments, I could see what he was talking about, but I guess, some of the stuff that's ingrained in Wilder and some of the things that he may want to look to do. I mean, it's obvious that if Tyson Fury's going to put pressure on him, he's got to develop some sort of back foot game, or at least improve upon it. The footwork's got to be a bit better. He's got to use the jab. Some of the things that he has done well in the past with his jab, he just, he hasn't really been doing it for a while. It'll be interesting to see what they can do in a short amount of time. I mean, that is if the fight happens in July. Who knows with coronavirus? But those three things, Hrgović, Forrest, what do you make of it? Buddy McGirt's comments, Kubrat Pulev hires a new trainer. I don't want to dwell on these things because I have done videos on them. But yeah, let me know. And we'll get back to the chat here. 62 in the building, so smash that, or 59 now, that dropped 3.5 seconds. So smash that like button if you can, that would be much appreciated. Thank you for joining the stream. I hope it's the stream, wherever you are, morning, noon, or night. Regia says, okay, we've done that one. Tyzy HD says Usyk's power may be underrated as he rarely sits on his punches, so he can't get countered easily, but against a slower opponent like Chisora he may put more pep in his pop. I can see him maybe doing that sort of as he sort of starts turning through the gears. I think he's going to respect Chisora early on. I think the same way that he did against former opponents that he's faced, where we see him sort of ratcheting up the gears. It's a noticeable increase at different points, and I could see that happening in the second half of the fight where he really wants to gas Chisora out. Piston Jab Liston says Usyk's got a lot of power on those shots. Philly Mills says fans seem to rank boxers on performances and not accomplishments, and good debates though. Liberalism is a cult says Boxing Squared, is Parker still your favourite heavyweight? If so, who's your second favourite heavyweight? Second favourite heavyweight, I don't necessarily. I mean, I think it's one of these things that if I was just a fan and I didn't have a boxing channel where I just covered heavyweight, maybe I would get more invested in fighters. But I try to sort of sit back and just enjoy it all because I'm covering it, and and this is one of the things that I think for a lot of boxing fans, you can enjoy the sport. You can follow divisions. You don't have to have one. I mean, some boxing fans only have one or two fighters that they follow and support. I just like seeing good fights, and I want to see good fights made. I want to enjoy the sport, and I think I was saying on the stream last week that it's one of these sports, as you well know, that you just get consumed by it. That once you become a hardcore fan, it's it's like going down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland. It is one of those sort of all-consuming sports. I don't have necessarily a second favourite or anything like that. It's just I just try to cover it, but also because I enjoy watching so many different heavyweights and covering it on the channel and that sort of stuff. I mean, sure, for some heavyweights I'm looking out for certain things and thinking certain things are going to happen, but I'm not sort of cheerleading for one over another. And this is, it always cracks me up where and this can sometimes happen in the same video where someone will say, oh, you're being biased for this fighter, and then someone else will say, oh, you're being biased for the other fighter. Man, I'm just giving you my thoughts on the fight, the fighters, the situation, sometimes the politics around it. And if people don't like it, well, whatever. Adrian says, I wonder if the coronavirus will have an effect on the time White will have to wait for his shot. That's a good question. You know, the WBC might end up doing some sort of special dispensation. If, say, Wilder Fury 3 or Fury Wilder 3 was pushed back for a number of months or whatever, maybe they would do something. It wouldn't surprise me. UK Rob Boxing says coronavirus is the best thing for Wilder, could allow more time for implementing the changes needed. Yeah, possibly, yeah. So Mrs. S, this is following up from what someone said before, that the Premier League is suspended. Timothy Thomas says BS, Rivas, Manuel Char, Brian Helenius, Kovnatsky, all official top 10. Chisora can beat them all. Look at So what top 10 are you trolling here, Timothy? Because Rivas, Manuel, Brian, Helenius, Kovnatsky are not in anyone's top 10. Piston, jab, Liston. In heavyweight boxing, everyone's punch you feel. You don't stop halfway through and say, wow, good shot. Consistency over power. BS, Will says, BS, you know you're a Parker fanboy, he's a Kiwi. Yeah, but just because he's a Kiwi doesn't mean, you know, I'm just going rah Joseph Parker. I mean, I've had a lot of people come to the channel say that I'm hating on Joseph Parker at different points, but what I'm doing in my videos, and this, you know, I'm keeping it consistent about the way that I talk about different fighters. It's, you know, if Joseph Parker and his team are on some, you know, some BS, then I'm going to call them out on it, and that's what I do with everyone. You know, I had a lot of people coming to the channel after the Wilder loss to Fury, saying that some of the videos that I was doing regarding Wilder's excuses, and that's what they were, that I was hating on him, and in my view, it wasn't. It was actually, I was, you know, analysing his statements and making a comment on it. I mean, he gave up so many embarrassing excuses, it was ridiculous. Doesn't mean that I don't like watching him as a fighter, and I think people can't, you know, separate the fact that, you know, there is analysis of fighters and their statements, and then there's also analysis of their performance as well, and sometimes they're not mutually exclusive. If, you know, people are saying all sorts of weird stuff, I'm going to be absolutely in on it. Unger says, Timothy, check trans TRRB rankings for a realistic top 10. Ignore the corrupt alphabet bodies rankings. So transnational. Cash Cow at Boxing Squared / Unger. I still don't know why I got timed out. Neither do I. I'm not sure what you said or who timed you out. Rizia says, talking on Wilder, does he need to change trainers? Because we all know how hard he hits, but his boxing skills have not really changed over the years. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because, I mean, some of it, and just bear with me for a second. I mean, there's a couple of questions there that you could ask. Is it because he's not getting the appropriate training? Are the trainers not able to get through to him, or, you know, or be able to teach him? Or is it part of Deontay Wilder not able to pick up some of the skills? Or is he being, you know, relying on his power, and he's decided he doesn't need to learn some of these things? Because he's clearly said before that, you know, some of the skills element is, you know, he's always got the power to get himself out of a fight, so it doesn't matter how skilled someone is, which is obviously, you know, didn't pay off in this fight with Tyson Fury, the rematch. But because Wilder has effectively said, and he said Breland's staying. I mean, we'll see on that front, even though he said that. I haven't heard Breland say he will. But, yeah, is it time for a change of trainers? I mean, I know that they're talking potentially of bringing other people in, but from, you know, what we hear, there's already a lot of voices that are, you know, in that camp. And if you bring extra people in, does that just confuse the advice and the training and other bits and pieces? But Malik Scott's been in Wilder's camp, you know, a number of times ahead of fights. You know, he's a very technical fighter. I'm not seeing any of these adjustments that he might be giving Wilder translating into the ring. So you have to ask yourself, and I guess, you know, I've referenced this interview a few times, but there was Ronnie Shields on the Boxing Voice a few weeks ago where he was sort of saying, I see them doing all these things in training camp, because he's been there at some point, you know, visiting or whatever, but he says he didn't see any of it transferring into the ring. And that's a problem, because if you're if you're drilling it why isn't it being implemented? Because that's kind of, you don't just do it for fun. You should be trying to, be implementing it into the ring, into your fight, into your game plan. So Fraser said, who is your pick to win the heavyweight Olympic gold? Definitely Bakadir Jalolov. I think he's going to take that one. Just a sec. Got a frog in my throat or something. So we've been going for 1 hour 54. Almost done everything on my list here. So last topic, Joseph Parker and Junior Farr. So it's 12:30 here at night. So you can tell I'm getting a little bit tired. The talk of this fight, it's some Higgins comments that I included in my latest heavyweight news mashup video. They're still talking up the prospect of this fight and saying it's going to be massive in New Zealand. I'm just not so sure. And when I did my video earlier this week, where there were the comments that Mark Cadell, Junior Farr's manager, was asking for $1 million for that fight, besides a lot of people thinking that's unrealistic, a lot of New Zealanders who were saying they were New Zealanders, they weren't interested in that fight. And I'm just not so sure how much interest they can really generate, because Higgins is sure it's going to do great numbers, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to do anywhere near the sort of numbers that Parker used to do when a Joseph Parker fight was a real big deal in New Zealand. But that was before, he lost. It's kind of, come off the highs. So I don't know if it's going to do anywhere near what they're sort of thinking it might do. So Barry says, who wins coronavirus versus us? I guess it depends on how healthy you are. But I heard there was someone saying that John Fury had coronavirus. I'd seen that a few places on social media. I'm not sure if that was true or not. But there was the line saying that coronavirus was expected to make a full recovery. Timothy Thomas says, BS just looked on the line, WBA and WBC and others. Yeah, see, the thing is, sanctioning body top 15s or top 10s is not what people generally regard as the top 10. Derek Chisora is, in my view, just not a top 10 fighter. If you think he is, you're entitled to that opinion. Piston Jab Liston, BS is famous for his lack of bias. Him and Boxing Wave are good for that. Yeah, I mean, see, I think part of the way that I approach my videos and sort of coverage of it in general is influenced by my previous career as a journalist. But, I'm trying to tell both sides of the story and, talk up different... But I'm not here to just fanboy for certain fighters. That's not what I'm trying to do for this sort of channel. I mean, and the fact is that I cover heavyweight. It's a niche within a niche sport to some degree. So, I'm interested in the fights. It's not necessarily about, rah-rah for one fighter over another. So if I say something and it offends you about your favorite fighter, don't take it as I'm, trying to be, as people accuse me of being biased against their fighter. Because, the next time that I say something about, someone else, people just get offended all over the place. Just take it for what it is. I'm just giving an opinion on the situation. I'm not trying to tear down any fighters unnecessarily, but if they say some stupid stuff, well, I'll get into them about it. Timothy Thomas says, okay, we just went through that one. Let Me Suck Your Toes. That name just did it just used to be Let Me Suck Your Toes? I'm pretty sure you've added the girl bit. So the coronavirus, if you're younger than Aram. Yeah, I would think that Bob Aram, he should be self-isolating. It's been tearing through over 80s anyway. I can't seem to get that off at this time of night. God of War says, BS is often critical about Parker. He keeps it real. Piston Jab says, this channel is a rare epic one of no bias, just calm facts, hardcore, blue collar sports, decent too. Yeah, Del Boys Boxing, or what used to be called Del Boys Boxing, the Blue Collar Sports TV, is a great channel. I'm not necessarily trying to be all pious or do anything, I'm just trying to run a channel the best way that I know how. So if people enjoy it, they enjoy it. I mean, if people like fanboy channels, that's over to them too. It's my sort of channel's not always going to be everyone's cup of tea, because it is maybe a bit more fact based. But I think some people don't realize that I'm giving a fair amount of opinion, and it's one of the things that always cracks me up is people say, oh, you're sitting on the fence about topics and stuff, and it's like, have you actually watched my videos? I mean, because some people only leave comments for as long as they can write the comment. You'd be amazed how many people don't actually watch the videos. It's just getting off a comment about their fighter and moving on. So Timothy Thomas says, check out boxing scene for rankings. So are you going around all ranking sites now trying to validate your idea that Derek Chisora is a top 10 fighter? You're entitled to that opinion. Nothing you're going to say or is going to change my mind on that. So Force Ghost Fabio says, have a great day, everyone. And I'll be off in a couple of minutes too. Unga says, BS 100, the reason I only subscribe to your channel. Will says, Scott, okay, I don't know who's timing who out. Okay, I thought I was on the chat, but I was way behind actually, so we'll try to catch up here. So Lubak says, kia ora squared, kia ora to you too. Unga says, Timothy Thomas, I heard his shadow beat him. Okay, is that about Wilder? Philly Mole says, itchy dry throat squared, symptom. Well, I hope not. Well, I mean, I guess to some extent, because I work from home, I've kind of self-isolated anyway, just through my circumstances of working from home. I think it's just a case of, because I've got a fan blowing in my face from the background, and it blows dust and other bits and pieces, and I've got down to the last of my water, so it's it's time to get a drink after this in a minute. But Regia says, Parker versus Farr, not no, I hope not, man. It's not like Atua versus Cameron, and that's the way David Higgins and others seem to be trying to, that this can be another great domestic rivalry. But if they really wanted to build to this fight and give it an edge, they would have been building the needle and the niggle over the last couple of years. They haven't really done that. Even David Higgins and Mark Cadell haven't really done that. It's only been sporadic talk about it, and the longer that they get away from their amateur fight, and the longer they're not talking about it, and the longer that Junior Farr doesn't have a decent win on his record to help build a Parker fight, it's just not getting built to to get interest. I mean, even casual sports fans don't exactly know who Junior Farr is in New Zealand, and that's a problem for them. So Unga says, can everyone jab the like button? Yes, please do so if you can. Okay, we're just catching up on the chat here. So Fraser says, most of the top fighters have now been beaten. Do you think boxing could benefit if the O is not so precious, or do you think it damages them if in every other walk of life a failure is the best teacher? Yeah, boxing is weird for that. It's part of that sort of whole Floyd Mayweather era. In days gone by, it was important to win, obviously, but a loss didn't define you, and most of the greats did have losses. But there is like matchmaking seems to have gone to the nth degree. I mean, there's a lot of fighters that are 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 and 0, completely padded records that on the strength. I mean, I remember the Tom Schwartz fight with Tyson Fury, the ESPN commentators. I mean, Tim Bradley, company man Bradley, trying to say that Tom Schwartz's right hand was like Deontay Wilder's right hand, and it was like, are you kidding me? I mean, Jesus. So Lubak says Lucas Brown will get sent into retirement in his next fight. That is if it goes ahead, because he's meant to fight later this month, but I don't know. So Regia says, bro, I have Paul Gallen versus Mark Hunt is on. What are your thoughts? Well, I'm sure Paul Gallen's going to make a lot of money. I mean, but Mark Hunt, what is he now, like 45, 47? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not so interested. I might watch, but yeah, I mean, that's probably going to be a $50 fight to buy. I don't know if I can justify that. Timothy says, I have a soft spot for Lucas Brown, hoping he wins. No, he's not going to win. If that fight goes ahead, he's getting knocked out by Abdi Dovtaev. Fraser Steen says, at Timothy, at Unger, just trying to ask meaningful boxing questions, to be honest. So Timothy Thomas says, BS, that's exactly what I'm doing. Also, search to validate Chisora in the top 10. Well, I like the effort, but yeah, I can't get on board with that. Lou Buck says, I hope he wins, but he's too slow and old. Are you talking about Lucas Brown there? Unger says, Fraser Steen, the zero has no relevance in my opinion. Muhammad Ali had 5 losses. Was he any good? Timothy says, give the guy a break, just making a living. Hopefully, if he does lose, hopefully Lucas Brown doesn't get knocked out and battered to the point where, it's an issue for his health. Because, he says he wants to continue for a couple of years. And, too many knockouts, that's going to really take a toll. And I do think he is going to get knocked out by Abdi Dovtaev. That's not me just, saying that Lucas Brown is... because some people have been saying that that I'm hating on Lucas Brown. No, I just think that he's a knockout waiting to happen. When I said that ahead of the Allen fight, and he was, and he did get knocked out, I do actually fear for his safety in some of these fights. So, Let Me Suck Your Toes Girl says, promise the Kiwi audience that Parker and Farr will play with a funny shaped ball before they throw hands. It will do alright. So Timothy Thomas says, give a big shout out to Lucas Brown. Well, he's going to need it. Will says, Parker versus Sonny Bill Williams all day. New Zealand and Australia will be off the chain for this fight. I think that's a mismatch. Joseph Parker will, I think, win easily. Sonny Bill Williams is a great athlete and he's got some boxing ability, but, he's also approaching a point and he's got a long injury history himself. Now, to me, that I feel that's a mismatch. Unger says, Fraser Steen, AJ was slated by certain fans for being hype when he lost. Someone saying Wilder is exposed from one loss. Shake my head. Timothy says he's a tattooed legend in his opinion of Lucas Brown. Okay, well, I am going to wrap up here. It's almost 1:45 here in the morning. And if there is that presser for Usyk and Chisora, I'm going to take a look and see what it is. But it'd be interesting, is that going to go ahead? There must be a lot of fear that these things are going to get postponed. It'd be interesting to see the UK reaction. Boris Johnson's reaction to this whole thing has been, as I think Frank Warren said in his statement, stoic. So we'll see. But, so 56 in the building. Thank you for joining me here, everyone. If it's morning, noon or night, hope you're having a good day. It's Saturday morning now here, 12:43 a.m. So I'll say good night from the future, and you'll catch me up in a few hours, no doubt. So, thank you for joining this stream, and we will be back next Friday. Take care.